Hey guys, Scott here on a bit of a slower Dead by Daylight news day. I was browsing Reddit, as I tend to do in bed, and I actually found a topic that was pretty interesting and I think is worthy of making a video about. It's the concept of what's something you really wish the other side understood better. And this is related to the whole us versus them mentality that this game definitely does have. Because, I mean, since the game came out, it's always been killers versus survivor, and there's just basically no empathy for the other side whatsoever. So I thought this thread might have some pretty good little tidbits here of where you might want to pay attention to what's going on the other side a bit more, because that I think would make the community less hostile towards each other. And it is a huge problem. People don't have empathy for the other side whatsoever. They only focus on their own problems most of the time, which is understandable. But I think the community would be better off if they understood the other side a bit more. And this goes for both roles. So the title one. For me as killer, I really wish survivors understood that when the game ends with 8 hooks and 0 kills, that didn't happen accidentally. I'm going to very much agree with that. I think of a killer as 8 hooks and 0 kills. The only way that happens, or 9 times out of 10, is because they're intentionally trying to do that. It's very hard to accidentally get max hooks on everybody without killing anybody. You pretty much have to try to do that. And if that's the case, then you should be, thankful for the killer that they're trying to be as nice as humanly possible there while still trying to hook and kill people eventually. Now it's something different if they let you go and he's got max hooks. I don't really think that's a good idea. I think the killer should still try to kill you and the survivor should still try to escape. But for the most part, if you do have 8 hooks, then I do think that the killer went out of their way to be extra nice that match. And so you should thank them for that, because that's something that a lot of people don't bother doing. Next, as a killer, if you pull some sick moves in chase, I'm actually really happy about it. Believe it or not, I actually don't like defending gens. I like chasing people. One just lets me do the other. So if you lead me on a good chase, I'm not upset. I completely agree with this mindset, because to me, the most fun part about the game is chasing. Now for killer, there is the macro skill component of knowing where people are, having a good idea of where to hook them, where dead zones are. There's a lot to keep track of in your head, so that's definitely a skill component as well. Survivor doesn't have that too much. Basically, it's don't regen yourself in terms of macro gameplay. But the chase is where both sides have a chance to shine there. And so when someone does an amazing move against me when I'm playing killer, 9 times out of 10, I can't do anything but go, damn, that was really good. Like if someone does like a perfectly timed shack vault where they're just in the right middle section and they know how to get the fast vault while also confirming I'm not going to double back, or someone greeds a loop they absolutely should not have greeted because they know I'm going to micro respect it or something like that. Just little things like that. I always respect plays like that. When people try to like 360 and stuff, it's more funny than anything. So I don't really think those are like super impressive plays, but the actual like little, the simplest thing I can think of here that doesn't seem impressive at all. When you're at a corner of the map and a survivor runs around a rock out of line of sight, it's a small rock. And then I go around the other side, but they didn't actually go around the other side. They just stopped right at the edge of line of sight and then started running, and they gained like 4 seconds of distance from that. Those little plays like that are what honestly impressed me the most, because they understand exactly how killer works. They understand how my FOV works. They understand how first person works. They know exactly when they're going to be out of line of sight and just start making distance. Little things like that are what I notice, and those are the things that make me go, damn, that was really good. He made something out of absolutely nothing there. And I think that is something that should be respected more. So when I see that kind of stuff, I completely agree that that's kind of awesome there. I'm not taking the same person that ruined your previous games and taking it out on people that have nothing to do with your previous games, or your personality disorder doesn't exact revenge on those you will likely never meet in game. Yeah. So that is something that I think people are terrible in this community with. You will get a team of 4 survivors before BMPs that teabag you at the exit gate, and you get mad at them. And so what do? You punish the next group by playing nurse with 4 slowdowns or something like that. But that next group is a super wholesome group. They're just going for some heckin' wholesome chases. They don't care if they die. They're just having a good time. And now they're miserable because you brought a bunch of bullshit. And now their next game, they're going to bring 4 BMPs. And you've just continued this infinite cycle of people bringing strong shit because they're mad about the previous match. That is one of the worst things this community does, is they punish children for the sins of the father, pretty much. It's like that whole phrase. But they punish people for the sins of the previous killer or previous survivors. Don't do that. You got to remember to take every game as a single game and not exact vengeance on the next people. Now, if it's the same people in your lobby, go ham there. But Other than that, I think it's really important to remember every time you go against people, it's going to be a different group. Don't get mad at people in those groups for something that the previous group did. It's just always not that great of a deal. This is a long one, but I'm curious. As a killer, I would like survivors to understand that killers generally don't keep track of which survivors are contributing a lot to their team, which survivors are sandbagging, playing poorly, or being useless. That's not... I don't agree with that premise. Because as a killer, I do recognize that. I can very much tell which survivors are being useless, which survivors are not doing gens, which survivors are not going for saves when they need to. I actually disagree with that. I think as a killer, I do generally... Well, he's speaking... Maybe this is not a general thing. I'm just speaking anecdotally from my personal experience. I'm pretty decent at telling who is being useful on a team and who's not being useful. There's a Nia following this chase, clicking a flashlight while I'm chasing someone else. I know that Nia's useless. It's pretty easy to identify these types of things, so I don't really agree with that whole premise, so I guess the rest of this probably won't hold weight because I disagree with the original premise there. It's still an interesting talking point, though, because I wonder if that's the general consensus among killers, that we can't tell who is doing what. There are sometimes you can't tell, like on really big maps and stuff like that, but for the most part, I'm pretty decent at telling who is being useless on the team. And in fact, the most annoying thing in the entire game for me is when I am playing killer and I see a bad teammate fucking over another teammate. That's like the only time I will go out of my way to camp or tunnel, is if like someone gets unhooked and then the person that unhooked them hides in a corner. Oh, I hate that. If I find that hiding guy, I will tunnel the shit out of them for being a useless, shitty teammate who just basically forces me to tunnel the guy off the hook because I can't find them. So anytime teammates are being bad like that, oh, I hate it. So I don't know. I've gotten good at recognizing that stuff. For killers, not every survivor is gen rushing or trying to sweat as hard as possible. Survivors literally do not have anything to do in the beginning of the game and for the majority of the match. It is ridiculous and unreasonable to expect survivors to crouch or walk around or cleanse dull bones while you chase someone. It's the killer equivalent of survivors expecting you to not double hook them if tapping a gen in your face. Yes. This is probably one of the most commonly cited salty, inexperienced killer things that you can see in the entire game. Survivors are just gen rushing me. No, they're just doing the only thing that they can do at the start of the match. There's physically nothing else for a survivor to do. If no one's hooked, no one's injured, and they don't have inner strength or something like that to set up a totem, there is nothing else for a survivor player to do. This is why at the start of the match, killer is at their weakest and why perks like Corrupt Intervention are really good, because at most you can probably find one survivor and begin chasing them, but this is a mistake a lot of killers make as well. If you, at the start of the match, find a lone survivor not on a generator, for me personally, a lot of times I won't chase that person, even if they're pretty close to me, because by chasing that person, I'm not interrupting the progress of a generator. Typically, survivors spawn in clusters, and I'm looking for at least 2 people to interrupt first. So if I see one guy running around not doing anything, but he's visible at the start of the match, I'll still likely ignore him or maybe just hit him once and then go somewhere else, because stopping the initial pressure survivors have at the start is the most important thing you can do at the beginning of the match, which is again why perks like Corrupt Intervention and Lethal Pursuer are so important. And that's an important skill to learn, where to take your first chase. It's not always the first thing you see is the best chase to take. Sometimes the first chase is better to be, even if it's 20 seconds delayed, if it's interrupting 2 people instead of 1 person. So that is something killers need to understand on the killer side. But yeah, you guys need to realize that survivors are not gen rushing 95% of the time. I will say the only real example of gen rushing where you basically ignore everything else but your objective is if there's like 2 teammates dying on a hook and the other 2 teammates are just doing gens. That is actually gen rushing. It's the equivalent of like tunneling, because you're just ignoring everything else in the match to just do this one thing, even at detriment to your own team. So that is the only example of true gen rushing, when you ignore everything else and just do gens. But for survivors, it ends up not even being good a lot of the time. So it's not even like a good thing to do, whereas tunneling for killer can sometimes be more effective than not. So yes, I think that is one of the biggest killer complaints I see. Survivors are gen rushing me. No, they're just doing the only thing they can do. If people say that, if they say that they're gen rushing, ask them what else they should be doing. They never have a response to it, because there's never an answer. There's nothing else for them to do. That is definitely a very commonly cited complaint. For survivors, not every killer is malicious with tunneling, camping, or slugging. Look at the situation you're in where your teammates are. I'd love to pick you up, but Nia and Adam are nearby waiting for a pallet flashlight save. I don't want to camp, but it's endgame collapse, and you have nothing to do or your team is swarming me. Another really good point. This is just an overall great post here. Not every killer is malicious with tunneling and camping and slugging. I tunnel and camp and slug fairly frequently. I like to, purport myself as a super heckin' wholesome gamer here. But if I down a survivor and I see a Nia 2 feet away with a flashlight, I'm not just going to go, whoop, I'm picking the guy up. I have to slug the guy and go chase the Nia. A lot of times survivors force you into scenarios where you have to do these things. Another example is someone's on a hook and you see a guy coming to get the unhook, and then he starts looping around the unhooked guy. You're forced to camp that guy because what the fuck else are you going to do? You're just chasing someone else now. A lot of the time, survivors induce behavior in killers that the survivors don't like, and it's the survivor's fault. I'm not saying killers don't face camp and tunnel all the time just for the hell of it because they want to, but a lot of the time, it is the survivor's fault that you're forcing them into this scenario. Endgame collapse, like you said, is another perfect example where you're kind of forced to camp because if a door is 99, the only way you're getting another down is if you hit someone that's unhooking and then hit him again. You're not going to double hit someone before they get to an exit gate. You have no other options. You have to camp that person. So a lot of times killers are forced into this scenario. There's nothing malicious about it. It's just something you have to do because the other option is just lose on purpose, which is stupid. So that is definitely true. Again, some killers are malicious and just do it because they want to, but that's an important point. Also, don't take advantage of a killer's politeness. If they just watch you get unhooked and letting you escape, that's not an invitation to start farming or start progressing the game in their face. I agree with this. This poster is based. Tataru, you're awesome. I agree with that as well. Sometimes someone will get unhooked. I will intentionally go in a wide berth around them to give them the space there. And how many times you try to be nice and then they try to body block you? If that happens, I go, fuck it, you're getting tunneled, and I don't even feel bad about it. I kind of like when that happens sometimes because I never get to tunnel and feel good about it, but when someone gets unhooked and they try to body block me for me going for someone else, I will tunnel the shit out of that person. So, yeah, don't take advantage of a killer's politeness. They could just say, well, fuck you then, I'm not being polite anymore, and then just go for you. And honestly, it's super satisfying as killer when that happens. So, honestly, keep doing it. I don't care because hey, it's me. My idea is having to scavenge for generator parts. I agree. That is a good idea. No wonder this guy is so based. He watches me. I promise I didn't pre-watch this shit or pre-look at this shit. Oh, that's funny. This goes for either side, but if you're being an ass while stomping on the opponent, then more likely you're just creating another meta slave. Also true. This is something that people need to keep in mind. I kind of touched on this earlier, but if you are that nurse with 4 slowdowns or you are that 4-man survivor with friends with 4 BMPs, you're going to force the other person into thinking that their next match is going to be like that as well. I wish people didn't think like that, but that's how they think. So they're going to take their next match as a result of their previous match. And then you're going to create more meta people. It's a never-ending meta chain. It's been going on for 7 years now. I don't think the wheel can be broken anymore. I think it's just too far gone at this point. But it has to start somewhere. So yeah, I do understand where meta slaves come from as a response to people doing that, previously. For me, when I'm playing killer, if I've expressly passed you over while you're injured and fresh off the outcome favor for someone else, you didn't somehow mega juke me, I just dislike tunneling. I feel like that one's pretty obvious. I agree. I agree with this here. Usually they get it. Like, if you get unhooked and a killer goes around you, it's pretty obvious they're just not trying to tunnel you. So I don't think that's even really a hotly debated fact there. That one's I think pretty obvious. This thread's good so far. I try to count hooks so no one's out too early, but sprinting around trying to murder people is not the best mental state for counting. Sometimes there's one gen left and I misremember which one of you's on death hook. That's true. Sometimes I'll be trying to go for max hooks and I'll just go, all right, I haven't hooked this 80 yet. And then I hook her and she dies. I'm like, oh, fuck. I didn't mean to do that. That happens, honestly, every time I stream. So that is definitely a thing, but that's mostly for killers that are going out of their way to play nice. As a survivor, getting tunneled out within the first 5 minutes really, really sucks. I've done absolutely nothing to you, Mr. and Mrs. Killer. I'm not a bully. I do gens to save my teammates. Otherwise, I mind my own business. As a Cheryl in Pyramid Head, you're supposed to protect me according to the movies. That's funny. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Just because they've done nothing wrong to the killer doesn't mean it's unjustified for them to tunnel you based on how the game is currently made. Tunneling is a weird one for me. I find tunneling sometimes to be detrimental to actually winning the match Because sometimes if the person I'm tunneling is a good survivor, it's actually worse to tunnel that person than it is to not tunnel them. Everyone looks to tunneling as this like ultimate evil, trap card that they have. They can pull out, I need to win now, I'm gonna tunnel. Not realizing that sometimes tunneling is worse for you. Because sometimes when you don't tunnel, you end up finding worse players that you can take advantage of and create dead zones much quicker. And you can actually get more of an effect by not tunneling than tunneling. So I don't see tunneling as this end-all amazing thing to do every time. People do it in comp because there's no other fucking way to win because it's a totally separate game. But in your average matches, sometimes tunneling is worse. So I don't know. I never really agreed with that whole mindset. Yeah. If I find you after you were just unhooked and I slug you on the ground and leave you, that is not tunneling. I'm giving you a second chance while keeping pressure. Yes, I do this a lot too. Sometimes, like, I will, someone will get unhooked and I'll down the unhooker, relatively quickly, and then I'll go and try to find someone else, and I end up finding the guy that was just previously on the hook. And a lot of the time, I'll just down them and I'll just go somewhere else because I'm like, I don't want to give this another hook state already. No one runs DS anymore, so it's not like I'm dodging DS. So it's just like, or a decisive strike. So usually I will just leave them on the ground and hopefully they can get picked up. I know getting slugged is not fun either, but I think getting slugged for 15, 20 seconds is better than just getting kicked out of the match early. So I'll try to do that. It never feels good to slug them either, though. That sounds like, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. Being better than your opponent shouldn't open the door to being abusive. Good sportsmanship can really help someone having a bad day. This one I honestly completely agree with. Being better than your opponent. If you're better than the opponents, you should be trying to play relatively nice, I guess. One of the most important things I think you can do in this game is learn how to sort of gauge how the match is going and change how much you're trying based on that. If you've gotten 4 hooks and not a single gen is popped, you can step back a little bit. You're going to win that match. You're not losing at that point. So go for some stupid chases that honestly wouldn't be a good idea. Try to spread out the hooks as much as possible. I think this is something that people don't do enough. They don't gauge how well the match is going, and they go way too hard or way too soft depending on how it's going. Yeah, if you've gotten 2 hooks and there's 2 gens left, go hard because you need to or you're going to lose. But a lot of the time, people put on the gas too early and they never let up, even when it's very clear they're stomping the shit out of the other team. This is Survivor and Killer too. If you've done 3 gens left and the Killer hasn't gotten a hook yet, just start doing some totems. Pick up a chest. Just do something you don't have to. It's pretty clear you guys are going to win. Try to make it a bit less painful. Again, you don't have to, but these are just things that'd be nice if the community tried doing. Again, I'm not expecting anyone to do it, but it'd be nice. Just because you're one doesn't mean you have to be a sore winner. I'm not going to watch you dance. I got to clean up all the wood you throw on the floor. This is my favorite thing to do. If I do lose a match and the survivors aren't leaving at endgame, I just go around and start kicking pallets. They're just wasting time. I'm getting more blood points. Also, it's doubly awesome for me because I get paid to stream this game. So I get paid, and I get paid in money and blood points. So for me, it's awesome when survivors sit at the exit gate because there's literally no downside. But for everyone else, just kick pellets. I guess can't kick generators. Kick pallets, just, I don't know, run around the map. Make them waste their 2 minutes. The way I look at it is that there's 4 survivors waiting 2 minutes for the endgame collapse. You're effectively wasting 8 minutes of time while they're only wasting 2 minutes of time. They're still coming out as Pepe losers there, so I don't see a downside there. Just go browse Reddit and find cool threads to make videos about. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good stopping point. This is a lot of actually interesting comments here. I might make another one here, but I don't want this to go too long. Yeah, this was fun. I think I might do more stuff like this when there's slow news days. This is really interesting. I think a lot of the posts here were really good that would help the community get a lot better, but a lot of people don't want to take that step in doing it. So, I don't know, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Surprising. Thanks for watching.